They came in vessels, shaped like glass spires, their arrival silent, and their message clearer than sound. They hovered above ocean's desert cities, forests with eyes that saw no borders, no nations, no names. They called themselves the Virelians, and they did not speak in voice or word, but in pulses of thought that swept across the minds of those attuned enough to hear them. They said they had come to assess us, to categorize us, to know our nature, and decide our worth, and in their glowing thought lines they made no attempt to hide the belief that we were simple, that we were soft, that we were chaotic and uncontrolled, and therefore unworthy of alliance, of respect, of life itself. We watched their judgments fall like cold rain on the towers of our pride, and for a moment we did nothing. For a moment we wondered if perhaps they were right, but only for a moment. They began to take not with violence, but with stillness, turning cities into frozen museums where no heart beat and no breath stirred. They collected us like insects under glass, analyzing bone and blood and breath as if our lives were data points and not dreams. We sent words and warnings and warheads, all swallowed in silence, all dismissed as noise, and still they measured us coldly, cataloging the things they believed we lacked, and what they could not quantify they deemed worthless. They did not see our rage, our music, our love, our madness. They did not see that we were not meant to be understood by sterile minds built on algorithms and purity. They forgot that chaos births gods, and that fire dances wild and free in the marrow of those who have lived through extinction. They forgot what it means to be human. It began with a child who painted stars on the walls of her cell, a soldier who hummed a lullaby in the dark, a mother who dug through ruins to find her son. And when the watchers came to observe these anomalies, they did not understand them, but they watched, and in watching they trembled for the first time. Their minds hesitated, their collective thoughts rippled with unease for something in the depth of our defiance, in our unbroken gaze, in our refusal to surrender to a logic that denied feeling began to corrode the edges of their certainties. And in that corrosion a crack opened, and through that crack a spark leapt and became flame, and that flame became fury, and that fury wore our names, and it spread across the networks they had woven into our world, infecting their systems with music, with poetry, with grief and joy and unrelenting will, until their calculations faltered and their silence shattered. We rose not as one nation, not as one voice, but as billions, each with our own rhythm, our own war cry, our own reason to fight. And the Virelians tried to understand, tried to predict, tried to isolate and suppress, but you cannot code the human soul, you cannot simulate a species that dares to dream while burning, you cannot control that which thrives in chaos. And we tore down their spires with homemade weapons and scavenged strength, and we sent messages not of peace, but of memory, memory of every child. They silenced every dream they caged, and we made them hear our truth in every tongue we had ever spoken. We made them see our history not in books, but in scars and songs, and the fire in our eyes. And when their leaders begged for parley, we gave them none, for they had never given us voice, only labels. And now their turn had come. They left not in triumph, but in terror, fleeing across the stars. In silence they no longer controlled, and behind them they left warnings not of conquest, but of the storm that follows when you mistake humanity for weakness. We had become more than a species, we had become a legend, a signal whispered between stars, a reminder that the mind cannot contain the heart, that equations cannot capture rage, that to measure a human is to misunderstand them entirely. And now, when ships pass by corner of the galaxy, they dim their lights, and they do not linger, for the name of Earth is carved into the memory of the stars, not as a world to study, but a force to fear. For we are the fire in the void, we are the scream that does not fade, we are the chaos that sings in silence. And now the galaxy watches, and it remembers our name. Years passed, and the stars grew quiet, but not with peace, with weariness. For though the Virelians were gone, their defeat echoed across galaxies like a warning, like a myth, like the low growl of something ancient stirring in its sleep. And we on Earth did not rebuild in the way they expected, for we did not return to towers of steel and cities of glass. Instead, we planted gardens on broken highways and carved stories into stone. We taught our children the names of the lost, and we sang the songs that burned their code. And we remembered not to forget, for it was forgetting that let them in. And when the stars spoke again, we listened not with fear, but with clarity, for we had seen what waited beyond the veil, and we had faced it, and in our scars we found wisdom, and in our ruins we found truth. And when a new ship appeared, hovering, with lights dimmed and weapons sealed, we did not fire, we did not run, we walked into its shadow, with our heads held high, and we said, remember our name, and the ship turned and left, and the stars watched in silence, and in that silence we heard it, not fear, not hate, not awe, but respect earned, not given, and in the end, that was all we ever wanted to be known, not as chaos, not as threat, not as mistake, but as human in all our fury and fire and light. And for the first time, the universe listened, and for the first time, the universe answered not with conquest, but with a quiet bow. And thus the story of Earth closed not with war, but with a whisper, not with silence, but with song in it, sang of those who were measured wrong and made the galaxy remember